This is John Cola with GrowingYourGreens.com. Today I have another exciting episode for you, and this is the one dedicated to gardeners who want to juice or are already juicing. One of the questions I get a lot is, hey John, I want to juice some stuff from my garden. What should I grow? So in this episode, we're going to take you around the yard to actually show you guys what I'm growing so that I could actually juice some amazing juice recipes. So next, let's go ahead and take a tour around the garden and show you guys what I'm growing and my suggestions for gardeners who want to juice or juicers who want to garden, and encourage everybody to start growing their own food today. So let's hit this garden and show you guys what's growing on. So as you can see, this is my front yard garden and this is my front raised bed. And because I am growing in a small residential space, that it dictates how I'm going to grow, and more specifically what I'm growing to grow. In today's situation, this is meant for people that want to juice or are juicing. So if you are juicing, one of the best things you can juice, in my opinion, are the dark leafy green vegetables, or leafy green vegetables, whether they're dark or not, have the highest levels of nutrition of any foods on the planet. What this means is they have a high level of phytochemicals, phytonutrients, which are the things I'm after, as well as things like vitamins and minerals, especially if you're growing them in the rock dust, which I recommend to get the wide spectrum of trace minerals. In my opinion, we should get our nutrients we need from the food and not a vitamin supplement. There's vitamin supplements came about when foods are no longer nutritious enough for us to eat and we need to take a mineral supplement. But if you're enriching your soils with the trace minerals, and these aren't things like the iron or calcium or magnesium, these are things like vanadium, strontium, and uranium, and all these different minerals that naturally occur in the Earth's crust in small, minute amounts. We're talking parts per million on some of these things. And yes, even things like lead, are contained in the soil naturally. It's only in high concentrations when you get into trouble. So the rock powders and the rock dust I use to supplement my soil, bring a wide spectrum of trace minerals into the soil, which then allows the plants to grow healthier, they grow bigger and taste better. But also, the minerals feed the plants, and now when I eat the plants, I'm getting my trace minerals so that I do not have to take a mineral supplement to get my trace minerals like many Americans may need to do if they're on a diet rich in processed foods, which, processing foods and junk foods, they process all the nutrients out of the food to give you basically the carbohydrates, fats, and proteins. But, our body really requires, in my opinion, the nutrients, the phytochemicals, the vitamins, and the minerals, which are far more important than just getting calories in your diet. So for that reason, that's why I'm growing a lot of the leafy green vegetables to juice. Now, when you're making a juice, you only want to use about 25% of the glass in leafy green vegetable juice because it can be strong and quite detoxifying, especially if you're not used to it. Other things you may want to grow if you have a lot of acreage are the other things you'd be juicing, such as the carrots. Today I'll be juicing carrots out of a bag because I'm not actually growing carrots, because to me it just doesn't make economic sense. I have a small property here and I don't have enough room to grow a lot of food, but I'm growing the most important things to me, and those are the leafy greens. Because if you go down to the store, at the store, a bunch of leafy greens, depending on where you live, may cost $2.99 a bunch, $3.99 a bunch. Someplace I've seen it for $2.99 a pound or $3.99 a pound. So leafy greens are also one of the easiest things to grow and to harvest. I mean, if you plant a tomato plant, you got to wait for the tomato to grow, the leaves to grow, and then you got to wait for the tomato to fruit and set fruit and then ripen up so that you can eat it. With leafy greens, you just literally plant them, and as soon as they start to grow and make a green and make leaves, you can pick them and eat them, and they're ready to go. Wow, this is amazingly sweet today. So that's why I like the leafy greens. By far, you're going to save the most money and get the most nutrition in the leafy greens when growing in a small residential style space like I am today. So anyways, let's go ahead and give you guys a tour of just some of the things I'm picking from my garden to juice. As you can see, we're giving you guys a close-up of my front raised bed. It's about waist height, so bending, and I made this bed this height so that it'd be level with all the beds going back to the property, since my property is sloped. So in this front bed, we have a whole bunch of different leafy green vegetables growing. It is the winter season now, so we're growing a lot of the brassica family plants, and those are some of the most nutritious plants on earth with the highest level of nutrition. So that's why I grow a lot of these. And also the other reason why I'm growing a lot of them is because they do well in the winter time. Actually, just last night, I think it got to like 29 degrees here, and these guys were frosted solid, but when the sun comes out, they thaw out, and they have a built-in antifreeze, just like, you know, your engine in your car, so that your car doesn't freeze when it's too cold out. Now, what I want to talk about next is actually picking your greens to juice. So when picking your greens to juice, you're going to want to pick the largest leaves. The largest leaves, even if they're bug-eaten, and that's a good sign, you want bugs to eat your stuff, you know, and usually the bugs pick out the best tasting stuff anyways. So your juicer doesn't care if they're bug-eaten or not, and this is an excellent way to use these guys to get the maximum nutrition out of your garden into you. Now, aside from just picking the large leaves, and also sometimes when picking leaves, like sometimes these leaves, because I do plant them so close together, they're shading other plants out. I'll also go and thin them out, and thinning your plants out and using the leaves to juice is an excellent thing to do. A lot of people may, you know, thin their plants out and actually, you know, put them in the compost pile, but you know, what better use than to juice them and then put the pulp in your compost pile, or better yet, feed it to your worms. So this guy here is like getting shaded out a little bit, and so we're gonna pluck him and we're gonna juice him right up in just a little bit. Let's see, another thing I encourage you guys to juice are wild foods that are edible. So one of the things I have here in my garden, we go ahead and pluck this guy out. We're literally just topping this guy out right here. This is the almighty stinging nettle that have stingers that'll get you, and I just got stung right over here as I pop this out for you guys. You can wear gloves, or you might want to wear gloves when picking this. I don't mind getting stung. It's kind of like, I don't know, it's kind of like a funny feeling. It's kind of cool. But anyways, one of the greatest ways to use the stinging nettles is in your vegetable juices. When you juice the stinging nettles, right, the juicer will just demolish all the stingers, and you know, when you drink the juice, you're not going to get stung, so it kind of deactivates the stingers. One of the old wives' tales I've heard is that the cure for the stinging is actually in the leafy green itself. So if you get stung, put a lot of the leafy green juice, and maybe that's going to help you. Anyways, juicing is my favorite way to use the stinging nettles to get this nutrition in me. Now, you might want to consider growing stinging nettles. This is actually a wild variety that just populated here, and actually at the community garden I have some special variety from Germany that I harvested on a wild foods walk, and harvested the seeds and brought them back, so they're growing quite well. But stinging nettles, if you go to the store and buy them, they're sold in the bulk herb section in your local health food store. These guys are $15 a pound dried stinging nettles. So if you want to go into business, man, grow some stinging nettles and dry it and sell the dried leaves. Man, $15 a pound, that's pretty good. I mean, it doesn't compare to some other medicinal herbs, but $15 a lot compared to your standard vegetables. So do not underestimate the power of the stinging nettles, one of the most nutritious plants in the world, and juice an excellent way to get some in you. So another thing that I love to juice is fresh grown celery. So you're looking at one of my celery plants here, and check it out. We're gonna go into the heart of the celery, and when you grow your own food, you get to choose what you want to juice, and we're gonna juice a little baby stalk. They tend to be fairly tender. Check it out. This is called a red venture celery. So this is a red stem celery, and I want to encourage you guys to, you know, embrace your foods of color. You know, that's what I'm saying, embrace your foods of color. So every variety of different plant, whether it's a different color or not, and I like the foods of color, have different levels of nutrition, antioxidants, different, more importantly, the phytochemicals, which are the things that, you know, prevent aging and can keep you young and healthy. So yeah, I'm gonna juice some red venture celery today in my juice, and advocate for always growing, you know, unique and rare varieties of plants to save the genetic diversity, but also get some of this excellent nutrition in you. Wow, man, some of the best celery I've tasted. That tastes like real celery, not just like the watered down stuff you'd buy in the grocery store. One of the things I'd highly encourage above all else to grow in your garden if you want to juice is the perennial vegetables that are leafy greens. So as you can see behind me, we have my perennial green tree collards. Yes, I'm growing a green tree collard variety and a purple tree collard variety. Now, while this variety is green, I could pick the leaves, and once again, these guys grow 365 days a year, day in, day out. Any day I could pick leaves of juice or use in salads or whatever. While this is the green variety, it does tend to go to seed and flower more. I just cut it back when it does that, and guess what? It continues to keep putting out for me, and I like plants that put out. So the next plant that I love to grow for juicing are these guys right in here, and this is literally a little chard patch that I grew the chard once. It went to seed, and now they just come up regularly, and this is my dedicated area now for the Swiss chard. So I have the green variety, And I like the growing chard because I have found it's a very durable plant, meaning it grows during the winter just fine, but also guess what? It doesn't mind the heat of the summer. So, say you live in the desert, Las Vegas or Phoenix, this should be an excellent leafy green to grow to juice because pretty much keep it watered, it'll do well all year long. Some of my favorite things to juice are the things that grow fast and really well in my garden. One of those things is right here. This is actually the Arugula. Right here, this has a nice peppery flavor, adds a nice peppery flavor to your juice. And one of the things when juicing I want to encourage you guys to do is actually pick and harvest the bolting tops. So the bolting tops, they're completely edible. You can put them in salads, but what better use than to put them in a juice? Another thing that I have next door that also is something really excellent to juice that grows especially well in the wintertime here is things like the bok choy. The bok choy, while I do juice it sometimes, I prefer to eat it. It has a nice crunchy stalk that's really water rich. I like to actually dip this stuff in some guacamole or a dressing and just eat it. Has a nice crunch. When you juice it, you lose that crunch. So next we're gonna harvest some dinosaur kale or lacticino kale, also called Tuscan kale or black kale. I don't think I know a kale with actually more names than this one here. But this kale I like because it's a nice dark leafy green vegetable, and this darkness or the darkness of the green here, how it's so dark, means it has a high chlorophyll level. And I like foods that are high in chlorophyll because the chlorophyll is very similar in structure to our own body's blood. And maybe that's why they say greens are so good for cleansing our blood, for example. Besides just the chlorophyll properties, there's also a lot of other nutrition in the dinosaur kale. And that's why I like to juice it. One of the reasons why I like to grow it is because I've learned that the dinosaur kale is one of the crops that are going to do well through all times of the year in this climate. So whether it's the summer and hot or the winter and cold, the dino kale can endure. Another kale that I'm growing right behind me here is probably one of my favorite kales overall, especially for the summer kales. This one will also do well in the summer and the winter. This is the red Russian kale. And I like this one a lot because it has a nice mild flavor and it just doesn't really look like a kale. It's almost kind of like ornamental-ish in stature. So anyways, now we got some dinosaur kale and some red Russian kale to juice up in the juice. So another thing I'm gonna juice today is something that came up as a volunteer. I grew this plant intentionally and I grew it once and I don't know if I'll ever grow it again because I don't have to, because now it's just readily seeds in my garden like everywhere. But this is a good issue, even when you have such a plant that most people don't like. And what that is, it's right here. Let me go ahead and carefully cut this guy out for you. I'll take a knife here and just cut this root out. And there it is. You guys know what that is? This guy is actually called the milk thistle. So the milk thistle has nice, large little prickers that'll get you. But what I like to do is when they're young, I actually like to harvest them and juice them. Now they sell milk thistle in your health food store for like liver detoxification. Mainly they sell the seeds, but guess what? The leaves also have that same benefit to a lesser degree, but also it has the chlorophyll. So now I want to show you guys what I'm growing next, and that's some Brussels sprouts. So you can see my Brussels sprouts are actually produced the sprout. Then they opened up, and this is just really cool, and you might be thinking, John, are you like upset you didn't actually get the tight closed sprouts that everybody wants? Well, I don't really care because in any form, whether it's a tight sprout ball or whether it's open, it's all edible, and I leave them on the plant until I'm ready to harvest and use them. So what I'm gonna do next is actually just pop off one of these little flowers here. This is a nice little bunch of leafy greens that now can be easily juiced in the juicer. Now you can see I'm sitting between my two raised beds on one of my pathways, and check it out. If you don't and are prudent at harvesting the seeds, like I grew some of these plants that are growing down in between the cracks here of the walkway. In the raised beds, the seeds dropped, and guess what? It rained and plants came up. So I have some cool plants coming up, including these guys right here, some of my favorite. This is the buckhorn plantain. So I like this guy a lot. Hey, it looks like a little cacti thing. So I love to, pick the leaves from plants that might get pulled up because they are weeds and growing in a non-desirable spot. What sometimes I do for these guys, actually, I just pull them up carefully and transplant them somewhere else. After all, if they could survive in between the cracks in my walkway, they could easily survive and thrive in my garden where I have enriched soil. Another thing that's growing down here are, of course, the chickweed here that we're gonna also harvest to juice in just a little bit. Now we're in the backyard and we're gonna pick even more greens for my juice. The next one I'm gonna pick is a common flower that many people might be growing now, but to me, it's gone the way of the weed. It's now a weed. It comes up wherever, and you know, I don't mind my weeds, especially if they're gonna provide me with food and they're not necessarily in the way. If they are in a pathway, of course I'm gonna trample them, but you know, I may not pull them up because a food is a food is a food. And you know, we have this whole mentality as gardeners is like, oh, that's a weed, it's not good. Well, hey, edible weeds is a good weed indeed. And yes, even some of those medicinal weeds are good weeds because they are edible. That's all I gotta say about that. But in any case, what we're gonna harvest now is another food, the borage. So this is the borage, but when they're young and baby leaves, you can actually eat these as salads. I personally like to juice them because it gets rid of the hairs. If you are picking these for salads, make sure you pick the baby leaves, even smaller than this size. This size to me is a perfect size to start juicing. Actually, in some cultures I heard they actually use the borage leaves actually instead of lettuce. So, and you know, in my opinion, the borage is a lot easier to grow than the lettuce, although kind of tastes like it too. So what I'm gonna pick next for my juice is yet another common weed. I didn't personally plant this here, they just started growing, and if something's gonna grow and it's edible, I'm just gonna let it go and eat it. So as you can see here, I have a whole section of dandelions growing. Here's some dandelion leaves right here. I encourage you guys to actually juice your weeds because it's an excellent way to get the nutrition out of the plant and into you, and then compost the pulp. Now when juicing dandelion, don't forget you can juice the leaves, also the stems, the flowers, and yes, even the roots. So in my garden, I have many things that I'm growing, some that I intentionally planted and some that I did not. And this is actually one that I did not plant that came up on its own. So these we call volunteers. And know what I do with volunteers? I eat them! They get to go in my juice today. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna pick some of these mallow leaves, and this is a purple flowered mallow that my friend Ryan in Hawaii gave me the seeds for, and I love this variety a lot. I started growing this because it's a tree mallow, so it grows tall, doesn't hug the ground, has a nice taproot that goes down and sucks up the nutrients and the water from below. And so I would encourage you, if you do have weeds or unwanted plants, hey, identify them and see if you can use them, like in your salads or like I'm doing today in my juice. So another thing that I'll be harvesting today to put in my juice are these guys right here. This is one amazing plant. I've had several episodes, you know, in the past about it. This is actually called my bronze fennel. So this is like the fennel, has that licoricey taste, but it's the bronze color, so it's actually nice and purty. But I like to add the fennel to my juices because it'll give it that kind of like licorice overtones, and I used to love black licorice as a kid. Nowadays, I just juice my bronze fennel. So if you guys are gardening for juicing or juicing for gardening, or I don't know, something like that. In general, as you saw, I like to pick the outer leaves of the plants. There's a little lettuce plant, and if I'm harvesting for juicing generally, or actually eating, generally I am picking just the outer leaves only. This way it'll allow the plant to continue to grow and produce me more delicious edible leaves. And man, this guy looks so good. Just had to eat it. Some amazing lettuce. You guys already know as gardeners, man, the stuff you grow is far better tasting than the stuff you can buy in the store. And guess what? Your juice is also going to taste that much better. Now there are some exceptions to the rule. You know, in general, I like to harvest the outer leaves. Sometimes in the case of like these guys right here, I have a whole bed and abundance of frisee. I love frisee, and I love frisee juice. So instead of picking the outer leaves, which would take a lot of time, especially when I have abundance of frisee, I'll just take a knife and I'll go ahead and, guy, you're going to be harvested today. I'll just go ahead and cut off the base. And now I have a whole little bunch of frisee that I can now juice. And in some cases, if you leave a little bit, it may actually start to regrow on its own. So now I got some frisee to put in my juice, and now maybe the plant will regenerate. But even if it doesn't, I'm all good because I still have lots of frisee. Next, I'm going to go ahead and harvest some other leafy greens that I'm now growing in my garden. And to me, these guys are just more leafy greens. This is cilantro. I love eating cilantro, whether plain or whether it's juiced. And This stuff's definitely really delicious. They say cilantro is very detoxifying, and wow, fresh picked cilantro smells really fragrant. The next thing we're gonna do is we're gonna go over to the juicer and start juicing some of these leafy greens that I've harvested today. So now we're back. We got all our leafy greens, a mixed variety of leafy greens, man. This is one of the reasons why I love gardening so much. Like, I harvested all these greens and man, I still look around me, there's still green everywhere. I didn't even put a dent in this stuff. You know, you can grow so much food in just a small amount of space. If you're not already growing, or if you are growing, you got to start using some of this stuff instead of letting it go to your compost pile to enrich your soil. It can enrich you and your body. So today what I'm going to juice is actually the greens along with some baby carrots. Now, I'm not currently growing carrots because it takes a lot of space, and carrots tend to grow a lot slower than the leafy greens, and carrots are very inexpensive to buy. Today I'm cheating. I got the organic baby peeled carrots. So these ones are smaller. I don't need to cut them up to put them in the juicer. Plus also the peeled carrots tend to be sweeter than the unpeeled ones when juicing. That being said, I always encourage you to juice with the peel on for the highest level of nutrition. One day, when I have more space, I'll be growing my own dang carrots too. I have grown carrots in the past, and I like to grow the heirloom varieties besides just the standard orange variety. The secret tip for juicing is if you are juicing and buying your carrots, you want to get the Bunny Love brand carrots. They tend by far to be the sweetest variety of carrot and make your juice taste better, so it's easier going down. Now I'm going to prepare the greens. Now to prepare the greens, you might notice that I haven't washed my greens, and you know, that's my personal choice. If you choose to wash your greens, and if I bought them from the store, I would be washing my greens because I don't know what's sprayed on them. I don't know who handled them, but I could tell you, you know, these are grown under organic methods. I don't spray anything on my stuff. And yeah, there might be some dust in the wind or some dirt on there, but guess what? This is my personal preference, and I can't advise you what to do in your household. It's always better to be safe than sorry, and if you're not comfortable with eating unwashed greens, then you want to wash them. I'm confident and have been doing this for many years, and I've never had an issue with it. But once again, that's if you want to wash your produce, is up to you. You know, in nature, animals, they never wash their produce, but you know, and they're coming from a pretty natural, unpolluted environment. So once again, each person needs to make up their own decisions. So to prepare the produce, all we're simply going to do is we're going to pile this up into a big, large pile here. Ever hear of a leafy green pile? Kind of like a dog pile. Pile this stuff up, take a nice large knife, and we're just going to slice it up. Now this is important in the Omega Vert style juicers because the fibrous in the stems may get caught up in the machine. So as you can see, we're just chopping this up into little pieces, and it's best to chop it up into little slices, no larger than 1/8 of an inch. So that is pretty small. This will minimize the amount of clogging, and also it'll minimize the amount of pulp that the juicer creates. Now once again, there are many different styles of juicers. I have many videos on YouTube explaining all the different ones and comparing them side by side, doing juice offs, juicing different items in them. But the Omega Vert is presently my favorite juicer just because it's fairly fast and efficient, easy to use and easy to clean. I find some juicers, you literally got to sit there and push each leaf into the machine. With the Omega Vert, as long as I cut up the produce properly, I could literally just take handfuls and dunk it in the machine and let the machine do all the work for me instead of me having to push the stuff in. So what we're going to do next, actually, we're just going to start juicing. As you can see, I have the standard juice collection cup, and I encourage you guys to go out to like a Target, Walmart, or other store and get a nice big measuring cup, because I don't just juice to, you know, have an 8-ounce juice. I juice like 32 to 64 ounces in one sitting, and that's me. That's literally a meal replacement. In this way, I'm getting high nutrient density foods with low calories, and the benefit is I'm getting in living water, nature's purified water, which is the best water on earth in my opinion. So I also have a little screen here because the Omega Vert does not come with a screen, and it does tend to make a lot of pulp in the juice. And if you don't like the pulp, just buy an inexpensive $2 strainer to remove it. So we're just gonna go ahead and stick that there, turn this machine on, and now we wanna rotate the produce when juicing. So we're gonna put a handful of the leafy greens in. I'm gonna shove that down in there. It's gonna go right in that chute. And then we're just gonna go ahead and follow that with a couple of carrots. All right, so now you can see the juice coming out, and once again, we're just gonna continue this process by putting some leaves and then some carrots to make some of this delicious juice. Now, I always recommend that you make your juices fresh. So what does that mean? That means, you know, when you want to drink some juice, you want to go out to your garden and pick the produce and then juice it and then drink it. It's far better to do that than to like make a big batch, you know, on Monday and then drink that through the week, because the longer the juice sits after it's been made, the more the nutrition goes down and it could go bad on you. At most, if I did need to save a juice, which is pretty rare, I'll save it for no more than 24 hours in a nice glass bottle or mason jar. I do have a good video on YouTube that explains the best way, in my opinion, to store the juices if you need to do that. Of course, if you work and you're not working from home and you can't go out to your garden any day, it's definitely best to pick all your fruits and vegetables in your garden in the morning, juice it, and then bring it right to work. Of course, if that's not possible, do it the night before, because I'd far rather you guys actually drink a vegetable juice that's sitting the overnight in the fridge than they're drinking that coffee or soda out of the soda machine at work. I don't have to tell you guys, it's far healthier to drink your own produce and use some of it instead of letting it bolt and flour and then end up in your compost bin. So use what you grow, and the juicer allows you to massively crank up the amount of produce that you're using and getting the nutrition in your body in the most digestible form. If you really think about it, our bodies are nothing more or less than juice extractors. You know, in goes the carrot on one side and out comes a liquid and out comes a solid on the backside of us. And just like in the juicer, right, it's taking the liquid out for us so that our body doesn't have to work to extract the nutrients, the liquid gold inside these vegetables that we're juicing today. Now, once again, I am doing a handful of greens followed by some carrots. Now, this is very important in the Omega Vert juicer, along with many other juicers, is to rotate what you're juicing. So the greens have one consistency, and actually that's a stinging nettles right there. Take that, stinging nettles. But the carrots have a completely different one, and every different, you know, produce texture can help the juicer work more effectively, because literally the carrots help push the greens through the machine to get the optimal extraction of the juices. Of course, if you said, hey John, I want to juice all greens, and nothing wrong with that. You might get sick by juicing all straight greens, but you could definitely do that, and there is a juicer for you. I'm going to give you my commercial plug now. Many of you guys already know what I do for a living. Many of you guys may not. I actually sell juicers, blenders, and dehydrators, and appliances that allow you to eat more fresh fruits and vegetables in your life. Eating more fresh fruits and vegetables in my life has made a dramatic difference in my life. And I'm like bouncing off walls and have so much energy, and that's what enables me to make these videos for you guys, as well as it keeps the lights on and pays my bills. So if you do need a juicer, blender, or dehydrator, I would encourage you guys to visit my website, discountjuicers.com. Being successful in that business allows me to do what I love, which is teach gardening. I have at least 300 videos on the juicers and the equipment, but guess what? I have over double that amount on teaching people how to grow their own food, because I believe it really is that important to grow your own food and also to juice it as well. As you guys can see, I'm almost halfway done, or more than half done juicing, and as I've been feeding in my pre-cut greens followed by some carrots, I've been making some juice, and my strainer's been catching a lot of pulp, because once again, one of the things with every juicer does make some kind of pulp. In general, you know, I recommend you strain your juice after you make it, like you would just juice in the container and then pour it through your strainer. With the Omega Vert, I like to double strain, so I like to strain as it comes out and then strain it once again at the end. So what I'm going to do now is actually we're shaking down the little strainer here, trying to get most of the juice through it, and you'll see a lot of pulp still sitting in the strainer. Now you could just throw this into the pulp catch bin here, but what I like to do is I want to get every last bit out. An easy thing to do is take a paint strainer bag, a nylon paint strainer bag, put it through there and squeeze it. That can get kind of messy, so what I like to do instead is actually just take it and dump it back into the juicer, and right after you put all that pulp in, what you're going to do then is actually just put some more carrots in. That'll help kind of like flush out the juice in the pulp, and then eject it out, and then also get you that juice without the pulp back into your strainer there. I'm going to go ahead and juice the rest of this stuff, and we'll be right back at you when I'm done juicing. So now we're down to the last handful of greens of juice right here. These are all the greens picked fresh from my garden. This juice is going to taste pretty amazing. Although, you know, I recommend if you do this juice at home, you might want to add some apples, because I'm pretty hardcore and don't have any apples today either, so I'm just doing the greens and the carrots. I'll be fine with that, but many people may not be. And once again, you may not want to juice this volume of greens or this many greens if you're not used to, because you may have some cleansing reactions. So as you can see, we got a whole little bin full of pulp here. Now the pulp is excellent to feed your compost pile or your worms. It's worked pretty well here. Got lots of juice and probably went through about, I don't know, maybe 3 pounds of carrots. Probably got about 2 pounds left. And we got the juice. We strained out a lot of the pulp, ran the pulp back through with the technique that I showed you guys a little bit earlier. What we're gonna do now is go ahead and turn off this machine. What I like to do is a quick presto changeo and put that under the juicing spout. Then we're gonna go ahead and take another pitcher here, and we're gonna go ahead and put our strainer through there and then double strain our juice. Now, most of the time you can just strain the juice once. The vert creates a fair bit of pulp, so I like to strain it and then double strain it at the end. The secret with these guys is pour real slow, or else it may dribble on you. As I'm pouring, I like to shake back and forth to make sure all the juice goes through the strainer and all the pulp is left in the strainer here. So it looks like we're getting out all the pulp, and there's not a whole lot of pulp left after you know, filtering it once. But once again, you know, when you strain your pulp out, the juice is going to taste a lot cleaner, and it changes the taste sensation of the juice to make it actually even sweeter. Another reason why I like to strain is that it also strains out the foam. The Omega Vert tends to produce less foam than other juicers, but it also depends on what you juice. So let's see, we're gonna go ahead and shake this down a little bit and get the last bit of juice through the strainer into my collection cup. Alright, so now we've strained all the pulp out, and there you can see there's a little bit of pulp. We're gonna go ahead and set that back in there. And now we have about 5.5 cups of juice goodness straight from the garden. Now gonna enrich my body. That tastes green. I like it, but if you're not used to juicing, once again, you might want to add some apples back into it to make it taste a lot better for you. Hopefully in this episode you learned about some of the crops you might want to grow if you are into juicing, or if you have a lot of crops already, hey, buy a juicer so that you could get some of this green goodness into your body instead of into your compost bin. Using your greens, in my opinion, is probably one of the best things you can do for your health and also for the environment, because growing your own food at home tastes far less of a carbon footprint than any of the commercially grown and transported foods to get to you. So once again, my name is John Kohler with growingyourgreens.com. We'll see you next time, and remember, keep on growing.